Hello everyone, my name is Awot, and I'm going to be finishing up my little tree tier list. This is part 3. If you guys want to see part 1 and 2, they're going to be linked in the top right corner. A little icon should be appearing right now telling you to click on them. Part 2 will appear first since that's the most recent part, and then part 1 will appear after part 2 if you haven't watched part 1 yet. So I am going to have one revision. Someone pointed out that I did not talk that badly about the pear tree, and then I went ahead and put in C tier right next to the Chinese pine, a tree that I have really slandered in the first part. And that was a little cruel of me to put the pear tree on par of a tree I clearly hated. When I said it myself in the last video, I really didn't want to put the pear tree in C tier. So I was laying in bed this morning thinking about it, and then I checked my phone, and there's yet another comment telling me that pear tree had some good potential, and then they would later on send me an image of a pear tree looking pretty great. So I took it upon myself to make a map with pear trees in it, which is the map you're seeing playing in the background right now. I'm still working on it, but I'll reveal more about the map in the next Dev Diary episode. It's still a heavy work in progress. It's definitely subject to change, which is also why I'm taking it easy and only playing against an extreme bot right now. No point trying too hard if I'm just going to change it later. And also my eyes are still kind of hurting. I don't want to be squinty too much at the screen. So I'm going to go back on my decision on putting it in C tier and move it up a tier to B tier. So rejoice pear tree lovers, I do not hate the pear tree. But with that out of the way, let's dive into our first new tree of the video, the palm tree. So this is currently the undisputed king of desert maps. Alone it stands in most desert maps. Maybe with the new Aztec assets coming out, it might give it a run for its money. But in terms of like Egyptian theming, it's going to stay the king for that. And on top of having a monopoly over the desert category, which by the way, the desert makes up a lot of the maps. I remember when I first started playing, I think I got desert maps 8 times in a row from the standard set at the time on the game's release. It got so bad I remember manually selecting March just so I wouldn't get another desert map. So on top of having a monopoly over such a big category, it also fits in so many other maps. You want your map to seem tropical, you throw a palm tree in the forest mix. There's so many like water maps that have palm trees in them. Being able to be placed on any grassy map with water, or any tropical map in general, and being the king of desert map is such a huge net. I gotta put it in a place I think it deserves, which is the S tier. And if I'm gonna be honest, I think this is the last S tier of the tree ranking tier list for now. So I'm going to give the palm tree another quick applause, and then let's move on to the next tree, which is the peach tree. Now, I previously said that the cherry tree looks way better than the peach tree, and I still stand by that. I just like the cherry tree's pink more than the peach tree. But with the cherry tree being a gameplay element, I'd opt out of using it, and therefore the peach tree makes itself as the only pink tree currently in the game. So for me personally, this puts it in a similar situation to the pear tree. I think just about most of the things I said to the pear tree can be applied to the peach tree with its unique color, where it kind of only fits by itself. And climate-wise, it's mostly a temperate grass tree, so it's got to compete with all the grass trees. That being said, though, I know if I say anything bad about it, I'm probably going to wake up to like 18 Steam messages from you guys. So I'm just going to say, if I put the pear tree in B tier, I think the peach tree deserves to go in B tier as well. Very nice and unique color. I like it a lot. And I'm going to move on now because I know a lot of my friends are going to be mad at me for playing a B tier and probably going to grief me in the next match. But anyway, next up we have is the snow Buddhist pine. And not sure why I didn't just rank this with the Buddhist pine, but this one's actually a tough rank for me. It's a snowy tree where its leaves actually turn all white, like it's actually covered in fully snow, versus the snowy pine and the snowy cypress, you can still see the green undertone with a drizzle of snow on top over it. So it being covered in snow makes it a top tier pick for me when I want to make a fully snow map, where the ground uses the thick snow. But the downside of that is if I want to make a map that's slightly snowy and doesn't have that thick snow, then it's going to look too bright and too out of place. And while I really like it being fully snow, I know that fully snow maps are not very popular in the community. Like, in general, I'm pretty sure White Point is very unliked because it burns your eyes if you try to play it at night, despite my best efforts to give it a lighting that would cover the snow. You could still sprinkle the snow Buddhist pine as an accent in a forest mix, and you make sure not to overdo the amount of it. But being reserved for very snowy maps, which is one of the least liked map types in the game, based on my experience and feedback, or only being used as an accent for other snowy type maps, I'm gonna have to put in C tier, unfortunately. As much as I do like this tree, you know, overall I was ranking it as if combined with the normal Buddhist pine. Instead of separating every variant, I think this would boost its score. But looking at it as a tree by itself, it's kind of rough. Next up is dead pine, and even though I've given the other dead trees, such as the normal dead tree and the dead Chinese pine, really high praise and good rankings, I unfortunately think the line gets drawn here. Since the first tree, the dead tree, is S tier because it's completely ambiguous. It could be any tree you want it to be, but dead. Goes in a lot of situations. Same thing, the Chinese pine, but with slightly less situations. But I'm pretty sure even the developers of the game use the dead Chinese pine as a substitute for the Japanese forest. So that Chinese pine can be applied to a good bit of situations. Its shape is not too weird that doesn't fit in. But then you look at dead pine, and yeah, it's obviously meant to be a dead version of pine, as opposed to the other ones where you could kind of just roleplay that's a dead version of any tree that had a similar shape. This one, there's no mistaking that's meant to be a pine tree. So mostly it's going to be reserved for winter maps, and it's hard to use alone because if you use it alone, the lack of leaves just makes it feel so empty. So generally I keep it reserved as an accent to pines, like any type of pine. Although if you play my maps, you'll notice that I use this asset in the underworld biomes a lot, or volcanic ones, where I'll have a forest mix consisting of all 3 types of dead trees, and the pine will be kind of a background accent there as well. Now, while this has much more limited uses than the other dead trees, it still has quite a bit of use, being that pine is one of the most common trees out there. The normal pines in S tier, you can find that tree nearly as much as you find oaks. The brown pine's applicable in many situations, and therefore the dead pine just goes great with it because it's the same color. And in snowy maps, pines and snowy pine are the most common trees there anyway, so it makes sense to put dead pine there. So despite being restricted to being a shadow of existing pines, the existing pines just do a good job of being all over the place, that this one actually has a decent amount of use. And, you know, like I said, if you're like me, you can also stretch it to be part of underworld assets as an accent there too. Having multiple uses like that, I think I can still put it in B tier, despite being way more specific than the other dead trees. And then next up is snow pine, right after dead pine, which is funny, but I should probably try and be more organized next time I try and make a tier list. So yeah, winter pine is just the king of all snow maps. On just about any snow map here, I can expect to find snowy pine on it. The pine tree is just such a common tree that you will find it regardless of what culture you're working with. So if you're making a Japanese snow map, it wouldn't be too far-fetched to throw a normal snowy pine in there as opposed to a snowy Buddhist pine. And even if you don't want it as the primary tree type in a snow map, it still works great as an accent to give that snow map a variety, since the rest of the snow trees are pretty limited. But surprisingly, I'm gonna give this a B tier as well. Despite being confined strictly to snow biomes, one of the least popular biomes in the game, I see this having use in just about all snow biome situations. Like, it would just make sense to put it in. Or am I just really favoring the pine family too hard? Because I have to admit, being used only in snow maps is very situational, with only 4 of the soon-to-be 7 cultures having snow variants. But oh well, I'm just gonna leave it there for now. I can change it in the future Aztec video if you guys have enough of a voice about it. Next up we have Savannah, which by far has one of the weirdest tree shapes in the game. Despite this tree shape though, I find it playing well with other trees. Since there's a limited amount of assets in the game, you'll find me trying to stretch this into dead or decaying maps or dirt maps as well as Savannah maps. But that's stretching, and it's hard to say it has use outside of that. But then also at the same time, I feel like it would be unfair to dock it for not having use outside Savannah maps, because this was created with the intention of being used in Savannah maps. That's like getting mad at your herster for dying to a war elephant. But at the same time, this tier list is about how much use I'm able to get out of these trees in all my maps. Okay, so this is me from the future. I just looked through my maps and I realized I used the Savannah tree more than I even used the peach tree at all. So even though it doesn't feel applicable due to its weird shape and the fact that it's not a very memorable looking tree, there is legitimate usage for it in a decent amount of places, despite the fact that I have it in the most random, nonsensical places. But like I disclaimed in episode 1, this tier list is heavily opinionated and biased, so I'm gonna have to go on a crazy leap here and just get this a B tier for looking nice in all my maps without raising a concern in anyone's eye. Sure, it didn't stick out like the peach tree blossoms do, but a lot of you guys probably already seen it in one of my maps and didn't even raise an eyebrow, which goes to show that it actually did really well with blending in and selling the look of the map. Next up we have Savannah Old. This is a round oak situation where you can't really use it as a forest type because of its massive shape. And that's kind of like the point of both round oak and Savannah Old, to be used as a random tree or a straggler, not as part of a forest. But the old Savannah tree, this one I actually do have to keep in desert biomes since it does look out of place in other biomes, versus the round oak, which can be used in grass biomes, which are the most common biome, and no one will bat an eye, versus this one, where even when I do use it in desert biomes, sometimes people do bat an eye at it. At least it doesn't lag like round oak does. Yeah, despite having such a big bush like round oak does, it does not lag the game like that tree. But regardless, I'm gonna have to put in C tier, since it's not very applicable outside of very specific desert uses. Next up we have the Tundra tree. Now you guys thought I hate the Chinese pine. Just wait until you hear what I have to say about the Tundra tree. And that is, I hate it. I hate the Tundra tree. This shape is terrible like 80% of the time. And what do you mean this belongs to the biome of the yellow grass? The only tree I really like putting this next to is pine tree, but even then I like putting just about any tree next to the pine tree. This tree looks horrible alone, it looks horrible with anything that's not the pine tree in my opinion. It looks horrible in the biome it was intended for. Like if I hate it in its own biome, then what am I gonna do with it? Like at least with Chinese pine, it's undisputed that it exists to be the Chinese tree. But in the tundra biome, I get the urge to use autumn trees over it each time because the actual tundra tree just looks like this. Like even it wasn't shaped as horribly as it was. I don't know how I feel about this bluish green tint contrasting the yellow grass. When I see that yellow autumn tundra grass, it just feels criminal not to put an autumn tree on it. If I had to put a green tree, then it would be the pine tree. And then you're like, well, maybe the tundra tree can go in the grass biome because it's green. Nah, I think it looks terrible there too. The only argument that I could find for this tree is that maybe sometimes it looks good as a background tree in a mix, if the mix has a bunch of other things going on. But essentially, isn't that saying I just don't want to see the tree? If I'm saying it only looks good if there's a million other trees that aren't it first, and it's definitely not going in any other biome besides grass or tundra. So yeah, I really dislike this tree. I was genuinely considering putting it as the only normal tree in S tier. That being said though, you can see in some of my maps I found some creative uses for it, and I do use it as an accent sometimes. So I'm going to spare it the embarrassment of putting it in F tier, and I'm going to put it in C tier for being able to be pulled out of the box and used once every moon. Sorry if I sound really harsh on hating on this tree, I just struggle with this tree so much. Like the maps I do use it in were definitely struggles of me trying to force myself to use the tundra tree because I try to use all the trees in the game. As a map maker, I want to appreciate the assets that we have to work with, and I don't like leaving some wasted. But with this tree, it genuinely twisted my hand sometimes and considered breaking that rule just for this tree. But thankfully, I figured out some smart applications to add it where it wouldn't look terrible. And then we move on to the snow variant, and this one has even more of an argument for me to put in F tier. Same terrible shape, it just has sprinkled snow over it, removing its ability to be used on normal grass biomes, now exclusively for snow biomes. But then any situation I would want to use a snow tundra tree, the snow pine would do a much better job at. So considering this one had even more reason for me to put in F tier, I was really tempted to make this one go in F tier and leave the normal one C tier and then call it a day. But I really didn't want to put a tree in F tier that had no gameplay reason against it being F tier. So I rambled through all my maps and told myself if I could find even one instance of the snowy tundra tree, I would move it to C tier instead of cursing it to be F tier. And for obvious reasons, Awot Unknown doesn't count since that has a chance of spawning any tree in the game that was not thrown in F tier. After rumbling through my map several times and thinking to myself, I realized there's in fact one map that sometimes spawns the snowy tundra tree in niche places. That's right, I have one map that sometimes spawn it, and that would be Awot Nomad. On Awot Nomad, each time you play the map, it rolls the dice to figure out what type of forest the snow biome should have, and one of the forests for the snow biome will have the snowy tundra tree as an accent. So on the map where the snow biome has a chance to not even spawn, there's a chance that on those snow biomes that there would be sometimes a snow tundra tree on it. What an obscure and niche use, but unfortunately I think that counts as it appearing in my maps, and so I'm not going to banish it to F tier, I'm going to put it in C tier as well. Now if I was doing any sort of like specific rankings, I would definitely put it at the very bottom of C tier, the C minus 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 if possible. Oh boy, who knew that hating could be so tiring, but we're finally on to the final tree of the tier list, which would be the Willow tree. The Willow tree is definitely a unique situation. It was introduced in the Immortal Pillars DLC, but not used in a skirmish map until the Heavenly Spear DLC. I think this tree definitely gives the marsh tree a run for its money. I think it fits marsh biomes fantastically, and then on top of fitting marsh biomes fantastically, I think it matches grass biomes pretty well as well. I could definitely slip in a grass biome, people tell me it looks amazing, they definitely like how the willow tree looks. And then in a similar manner to palm tree, it just goes great on water type maps because that's the kind of biome that you would expect a willow tree to naturally be in. So on water type maps that are not going for a tropical look, the willow tree definitely shoots up in priority. So between it being useful on non-tropical water maps, in general, just being a great fit with other grass trees, and then giving marsh a run for its money for the top marsh tree, I think this deserves a solid A tier slot. Depending on how you use this could even be used as a tree for a spooky map, which is what I did. I noticed that even in the official vanilla map that uses willow trees, it has a bunch of fog to give it a little spooky vibe as well. And then of course you also find it on that and yeah, it's originally a Chinese tree, so if you ever want to make a Chinese type map, then the willow tree is a good green one that gives a neutral color, as opposed to Chinese pine, which is a very dark color, and the Meta Sequoia, which would require extra work for you to make it into a normal tree. Oh right, and the ginkgo has a bright lime green as well. So surprisingly the most normal colored tree in the Chinese set. and Japanese set too, would be this one. But I think this is A tier for the fact that it gives Marsh a run for its money in most situations, and then it has so many applications on top of that. And with that, we've finished our tier list, and I'll be showing it on screen right now. Of course, there were some biases, such as when I was hating on the Tundra tree. I admit that I'm pretty biased towards that, when it could absolutely be a skill issue on my part in terms of creativeness and using it. And this tier list overall has been pretty unstructured, unscripted, just random yapping, but I hoped that would give it more of a natural reaction, because I felt like if I had too much meticulous planning with it, then it would become influenced and change instead of having my natural feelings about it. Or maybe I'm just overthinking it. But yeah, I'm very happy that this tier list has been out of the way now that the Aztecs are coming very soon. So soon, in fact, they've already started to show teasers for it. So that's fun. And then hopefully I'll be able to get the next development diary out by Friday, since I already have something planned for Wednesday. So thank you for watching, and have a great night as usual.